Welcome back to the Easy Button Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Cole Ruud-Johnson. Today we have Mr. Rowan Hallahan in Connecticut, live from Connecticut. And a couple episodes ago, about a month or two ago, we had his brother, Sean, on, and they are partners. Sean is based in LA area, and Rowan's actually a boots on the ground in Connecticut. So super excited to have him on today and dive into what I think is a cool story of them going from their W-2 to running this business full time now, both of them. And doing flips, doing wholesale deals, and building a business out in a harder market too, which I think a lot of our listeners are in harder markets that are higher price points, lower deal volumes. So excited to get into today's show. Rowan, welcome. Why don't you start with just you, a little bit about your background, how you got into this thing, and anything else you want to share about Hallahan Home Buyers, which I know isn't the actual name, but I think it's a cool one.
No, it's Hal Buys Homes, so we're not too far off. But it all started a few years ago, and I graduated college, but COVID hit. I was back home, but Sean was still living in California, so he came home, and he had just told me and my other brother about his property that he bought in Cleveland. So Sean initially purchased the property in Cleveland, and at that time I didn't know much about real estate. I'm an engineer by background, and so was Sean. So I was surprised to hear that he was getting into it. But that night I was taking him to one of his friend's house because he didn't have his car. So he just tell me a little bit more about it and said, "Hey, why don't you if you're interested, take a look, read these few books and, get back to me in a month." So the bigger pockets books, like How to Invest in Real Estate, House Hacking Strategy, and then Rich Dad Poor Dad. And at that time, the financial independence, retire early was really big. So I was getting a lot of that. So I was like, I'm just got 5 rental properties. And,
How long ago was this?
That was in COVID. So that was, midway through 2020.
Okay. Yeah.
He came home and then kind of introduced me to it, and we figured out a way to partner up, where I was the sweat equity. And so I went to some real estate meetups, found the first property off market, actually through a friend of the meetup, and, bought a triplex, renovated it in a year, rented it all out, moved on the day that FHA loan ran out, or that home ownership, or owner occupant requirement ran out, bought my next one. And then we were trying to just fund it with purely the cash that the renters were putting off. Ran out of money, and then that's where we pivoted and said, "All right, maybe we should try flipping houses."
Yeah, that's actually a fairly typical intro runway. Is you see the dream online of like, I'm going to buy a few rentals and quit my job and sail into the sunset, and then you buy a few, and you're like, yeah, there's some tax benefits of it. There's maybe a little bit of cash flow. You get a little bit of appreciation, but you got to buy a shit ton of them to really have that like sail off into the sunset thing happen. And then a lot of people go, yeah, but I'm in real estate, might as well flip a few or wholesale a few or build a few. And then you kind of get addicted to the active income piece, which I think is even more impactful for people than the passive side. And pairing those two things is obviously the sweet spot, which I think you guys do well. So kind of segueing from the intro, in the sense of you went through the normal, you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, you learned about rentals. It was a little slower than you wanted. You started doing active deals. What was that first flip that you guys decided to take a crack at? Like, what was that? What did that deal look like?
Yeah, so that one was on market. It was a 3-bed, 1.5 bath raised ranch, kind of just your perfect, cosmetic job. And we went into that one expecting to make 30. And at our initial underwriting, if we'd sold it at that value, you probably would have made 0, but the market gave us a little bump and we made 20 grand on it. So that was our very first one. And, it's just on market. And, the challenge with that was we were realizing all these houses that had sold in the area just weren't going to pencil for what our numbers were actually going to be. So we were like, we need to figure out how to, bring in some other, proprietary deal flow to continue this. And because we're enjoying, we had fun on the first couple and we wanted to continue, but it wasn't going to be something consistent unless we could, build out an acquisition man.
And obviously there's a little fear there, right? I know Sean stayed in his W-2 for a while. But did you have a W-2 at the time, or did you kind of jump full-time into this at that point? What was that transition like from, okay, we did our first flip, to how do we make this a consistent business? And how did you guys like divvy up roles? Because I think a lot of people listening to this are in partnerships, and maybe not with their siblings, but they're in partnerships or they are thinking about that. How did you guys kind of divvy up initial roles and responsibilities and slowly make that transition from employed to self-employed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was, going from employed to self-employed was a big leap. So I graduated school at the beginning of 2020 and then worked as an engineer for 3.5 years, mechanical engineer, and then went full time beginning of 2024. So that leap was, what a big one. And at that time, I was making cold calls on the side of my W-2, trying to generate some more deal flow. We had done already a few flips at that point. But we're like, if one of us goes full time, you think that we can ramp it up a bit. So far, has paid off. So that was beginning of last year, and we're able to get some more projects. And then a year and 3 months later, so in March of this year, Sean went full time as well, like generating enough money to support us, even if they're modest salaries or whatever, however you want to structure it.
Yeah.
But so that just kind of got us going. But in terms of how we're divvying up our roles, right now, you talk a lot about the hustler phase. We're in that right now.
Yep.
We're in the day to day making cold calls. We've now coupled it with some EBL marketing as well. But, we're still trying to make the cold calls, do the daily work, that the revenue generating activities that are so important to keep it moving forward.
I love that, man. Yeah, I think it's so rare to be able to really go self-employed and leave a W-2 and kind of write your own check and really go full into door number two. And I think a lot of people think it's when you do that, you're like, it's at the point where you're making each a couple $100,000 a year from the business. But like for me, the first 4 years of my business, I was paying myself 4 or 5 grand a month. And we were doing a lot of revenue, but I just knew that if I wanted to really grow something serious, that was going to be my long-term career, I had to be very cautious, at least for the first part of it. And it sounds like you guys are doing a good job of that, right? Obviously, there's a point where, for you guys listening, a lot of people have that question of when do I leave my job? And I think my number one piece of advice, and I kind of told Sean this when he was right on the fringe of it, is when you believe your job is actually losing you money, right? Because you have enough opportunity, you have the conversations, you have the deal flow, you have the operations needs, that your job's losing you money is typically a good point. That doesn't mean you're going to make more money from your business right away, but enough to get you by and fully focus on that. And when you fully focus on something, good things tend to happen. Let me ask you this, Rowan. I think one of the things that's fascinating is I wouldn't call you or Sean like the classic B2C salesman. You both are kind of like me. You're both kind of more engineer brain, operations brain, but you guys have been able to make it work, and you have to at the beginning. You have to make deals happen somehow. And I remember being on the phone dialing every single day for 6 months for my first deal, and then I did sales for a long time for my business, and I didn't love it, and I don't think either of you really fully love that part of it. But what has Easy Button been able to help you guys with? What have you been able to implement sales wise that still helped you guys manage to get the first few deals done and start making the money you need to make to leave your W-2 and really turn this thing into a business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the biggest transition we had to make in, that mindset to be open to learning sales and, trying to refine that skill set that comes with it. Running construction site is much more in line with what I've been accustomed to in the past. So that feels much more natural and structured, while dealing with sellers on especially on the B2C side where you're dealing with so much emotion. It's a different beast. So learning the sales process has been an exciting thing to learn and just kind of deep dive into. And EBL has been a crucial part of that, with, having weekly coaching calls, and then, just a community that's willing to, answer any questions you might have at any time. So there's lots of different aspects, but, it's weekly calls and just saying, hey, I'm going through this. What should I do next? Or, any recommendations on how I could have approached this conversation a little bit better. Those make all the difference, like the minor tweaks, to really accelerate your speed, your growth.
What's the biggest kind of thing that you've implemented on the sales side do you think helps you consistently as you guys talk to sellers?
I would say the biggest aspect is going in with the mindset of trying to help that individual and see if you're actually the right fit for them. At the beginning, it was so often where you're going into a call and collecting your basic information about the property, and then Sean and I kind of joke about what that looked like, and it's like, hey, I got all the information I need. I'm gonna come back to you with a number, and it's like,
Yeah,
all right, where is this actually gonna go? And
yeah,
trying to get away from that approach and really trying to assist with them. And also being willing to not offer at a given time, I think is a big aspect where some people are just throwing out numbers. Hey, if it's not right for you right now, let's talk in a couple months and see if that's something that will work for you then. But for now, it's just we'll just stay in touch and see if anything's changed. So I think that's been a big unlock for the way we approach it, and also the idea that we are in this business to help people and
Yeah.
for whatever situation they may be going. So
And actually internalize that. I recorded a show yesterday with Mason, and he was talking about, hey, when he actually believed himself that he was providing a real solution, that's when everything turned around for him. And I think one of the things you hit on, that'll double click on, is just being okay letting the sales process play out, because it can take 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. And a lot of people want to rush it and force it. But I always say, if you took the frame of, if you had 10 deals closing this month, how would you treat that next seller? Probably with a lot less urgency and the attitude of like, hey, whether I get this deal or not, I'm okay. And I always say deals beget more deals, because when you're in that mindset of like, hey, I don't need this deal to pay my bills, even if you have to fake it, that translates across the phone and creates a better experience, because you're then really there to listen and solve problems and not there thinking of like, hey, how can I get this next check? That's such a big unlock. I think everyone listening, that's a huge thing to implement, especially because a lot of us aren't like I'm not the best salesperson. Right? A lot of us aren't, but we have to get that part done to start building a business and eventually hire a salesperson. And I'll let that lead into kind of the next question, Rowan, which is, what are you guys building? Fast forward a year from now. Now you guys have the sales and marketing piece down. You're doing some flips. You're wholesaling some deals. You're making money. What do the next 12 months look like for you guys and How Home Buyers, and where do you want to be a year from now?
yeah, so we've been talking about this a bit, and for our big goal this year was to target $300,000 in profit, in gross profit, and that's a double from last year. So we're gonna try to do that again and double again next year. But an exercise we just did the other day was it was the question Sean posed to me and I posed to him, is like, in 6 months, what would it look like for me to say you've really changed the business and that you've improved the business? What we kind of came up with, and pretty aligned on this, which was awesome. We have those check-ins often, and Sean's great at this high level game plan. How are we going to do this? We're not trying to spin our wheels. Let's make sure we're doing the right daily activities. But for me, it would be one, we're both very much in the hustler stage right now. We want it to progress to a point where, we've also defined our responsibilities, and where Sean would be leading the acquisitions on, and, feeding me appointments, feeding me, projects to take on while I'm focused on running those projects. And a big goal of ours is to, we want to be able to hire these roles out.
Yeah.
So from his perspective, it's like, hey, how can I learn the skills and become proficient and excellent and be master, the sales side of things, where I could hire someone and they're not, maybe there's some back and forth, but I'm teaching them and I'm onboarding them how we want to do it. And then for me, it would be, Sean's like always like, so how's this part of the project going? And so it's like building out that transparency within the construction. So that way, hey, if I'm not on site and we're doing work, how do we, relay that information? So that way, if we bring in a construction manager, they're giving us the information we need to make decisions and, grow that. So you can have multiple projects going at once. So that's like, how do we hire ourselves out of this to scale, to make it grow? That's kind of our main approach right now.
And scale profit, right? Not just more deals, right?
Not just more deals.
That's the board one. And I think one thing, you guys, I think everyone listening to the show, the reason you're learning, trying to grow, is because you want to make more money. That's just put simply. We're in business to make more money. Yeah, a lot of us want to make an impact, want to help sellers, but a lot of us want to increase our income. And focusing as you scale, right? Scaling to me is scaling profit, not just scaling revenue. And one of the things I think you guys do a great job of is looking inwards and looking inwards at, hey, maybe it's us that has a skill issue. Maybe it's not the market. Maybe it's not the interest rates. Maybe it's not our geographic area or our asset class or our business plan. Maybe we just don't have the skills that we need yet to hire, to close at the numbers we need to close at. And you guys have always been able to do that. And that's why I think you're consistently doing deals and hitting your goals and doubling year over year. It's because you take business seriously and you show up and you look inwards and you solve the skill issues that are in front of you. And for you guys out there, like if you treat this business like a hobby, especially in a sideways or down market, it's going to pay you like a hobby. If you treat it seriously, you treat it like a business, you lean in, you keep getting better, you show up every single day, it'll pay you like a business. And then when the market gets better, you're going to be in a very good place. And I think Rowan, for you and Sean, you guys started this thing really, and most of the time you've been in this business has been in one of the harder market cycles in the last 15 years. And so I think you're building the foundation and the rooting and the skill set to when the market does turn around, you probably won't just be doubling every single year. You'll probably be, tripling, quadrupling, and growing exponentially to the extent you guys want. And you'll find that kind of medium, that middle ground, like, hey, how big do we want to get? What is the return on brain damage that we want? How big do we want to build our portfolio? Like all those questions you guys will continue to ask yourselves. And I'm excited to watch that journey unfold. One of the things I'll ask you here, kind of as we head towards the back, quarter of the show is, one, what made you end up deciding to work with us at Easy Button? What's the thing that pushed you over the line? Because you've been with us now 6 months, 8 months. I feel like a long time now.
Yeah, I think are we coming up on a year?
Yeah, maybe
coming up on a year actually.
And then the second part of that is, if someone came up to you or Instagram DM'd you and said, am I the right fit to work with Easy Button and their team on the deal engine? How would you answer that question? Who is or isn't the right fit? So those two questions, the first one is, what made you decide to move over the line and work with us? And the second, who is the right fit to work with us at Easy Button?
Yeah. So where we first started hearing about you is I listened to your podcast during COVID when I was just in my bigger pocket space. So I started following the Instagram from there. So I'd always been exposed to some of your content, and then we're initially starting to post more about EDL. But then we did join a cohort with James Daynard and his team up in Seattle, which was an awesome experience. Spoken with him, being like yourself, just at that next level. And he mentioned adding a cold calling channel, a third party company, and so he kind of ran the idea by us. We're like, okay, let's explore that a little bit more. So we jumped on a call with your team. And, we knew that there was something more we needed. And, ultimately it was the lead flow, but then also the combination of knowing that we had, some experts and, community around us to focus on that sales side of things. Because that was our biggest deficiency. We knew it from the start, but we're not sales. We don't know what we're doing with this. So when we were on that first call with Nelson, I just was asking me, so are you guys going to help us with this? He's like, yeah, we're going to work side by side with you guys to make sure you're the tools needed to not just get the leads in the door, but to convert the leads. Because just getting the leads in the door is just the start. That doesn't mean you're going to get projects.
Yep. Second one, who's the right fit to work with us?
Yeah. So for the right fit is, the people that are willing to put in the work. One, foundationally, you got to have some money to deploy for 6 months to really flesh out if that, marketing channel is going to be what you need. Because if you do it for any shorter than that, just not going to, that's too short of time to really develop your pipeline at that point. So one, you have to have some funds set aside, ready to go. And then once you deploy those, go full in. Make sure you're calling your leads the day of that they come in. You're listening back to your calls. You're spending the time needed to convert those leads just because, you're paying for them, and they're coming in the door. You got to be fully committed. It's that hobby mentality versus running it like a business.
Yep.
So if you're willing to put in the work, this is a community of, doers that are, looking to build and, really make things happen. So, that'd be the biggest aspect. You got to be willing to put in the work.
Love it. Well, you guys, thank you for sticking around for another episode of the Easy Button Real Estate Podcast. We only grow through word of mouth, and we've been growing tremendously week over week. So appreciate you guys telling a friend, a coworker, anyone you meet about the show. We try to make these very actionable, and I hope today Rowan's story, just a real operator in the trenches. You guys took some things that could help you do more deals, make more money, which is why we're all in this business. A like, a review, a share, no matter where you listen to the show means the world. Let us know who you want to see, what you want to hear, how we can continue to improve the show for you. And as I always end, you are only one deal away.